I am very pleased indeed to welcome Chi Onwurah, the Shadow Science Minister. She is herself a very successful engineer who's had a stellar career in engineering and was also head of telecoms technology at Ofcom, the regulator, before entering Parliament in 2010, representing Newcastle upon Tyne Central. And she will be telling us more about her own journey in her words. Okay. So, Chi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and it's absolutely brilliant to be here and to see so many people. Looking forward to discussing women as part of the Women in STEM Festival. It's such a pleasure to be here as an engineer myself, as Dorothy said. And indeed, when I met with Dorothy back in, I think it was June, and you first mentioned to me that this festival, I was so excited, which isn't always my response to meetings with academics, I will be quite honest with you. But it was really inspiring to hear, the role that Murray Edwards was looking to take in celebrating and promoting women in STEM. So as I've been asked to speak about why we need to diversify and how to make it happen, which is convenient because that is something that I have been thinking about literally, I think, since I was a child. But I'm going to talk a little bit about my own journey, as it were. Actually, I've got I'm Shadow Minister for Science, Research and Innovation, but my own journey to give some context to it. But first, a little test. Right. The world's first computer programmer, the founder of the stats, the founder of the stats as a science, and the woman who wrote The Flight Path to Get a Man on the Moon. So if you close your eyes, I should say, if you close your eyes, what images come to mind when you hear those titles? Well, actually, and that's what the slides were headed, that's the world's first computer programmer, Ada Lovelace. And many of you, if you're here, you probably know her history. But I always say, and sometimes I call the slide, Reclaim the Bite, because I say there was a time when 100% of the world's computing talent was female, and now we're only aiming for 50%, so, it shouldn't be too difficult, you'd think. But it's also the founder of Science and Statistics and the inventor of the pie chart. Was the lady in the lamp actually had, the biggest share of the statistical pie. And of course, who wrote The Flight Path to Put a Man on the Moon was this fantastic woman, Katherine Johnson, and I suppose it is some compensation for being ignored for decades to be played by a fantastically beautiful Hollywood actor in the film Hidden Figures, which was a great film. But the point here is that the stories of it's not. It's not that I, as an engineer, or you, are freaks. There have been a long-standing history of women in STEM. It's just that their stories have not been told or celebrated enough. And that is why we're here, because it's important to tell each other stories, because what it tells about the boundaries of the possible, and because listening to other stories and indeed examining our own, we can learn from the challenges we've overcome. And that's what part of today is about: how to overcome those challenges and how we can make a real change in the horrifying statistics of women in STEM. So, but first a bit about my background. So it has been quite a journey for me. I was remembering actually an episode a couple of years after I was first elected in 2010, and I was speaking at the Dorchester, which is a very big hotel in London, if you and I was late, because I'm always late, and I was running to get to the Dorchester, and it was a black tie event, and I understand you have some of those here in Cambridge as well, so you know what I'm talking about, and I was running in high heels and a shiny dress, and because one of the things they don't tell you, of course, the Dorchesters and all those hotels are miles away, well, I was a mile away from any public transport, because I guess you were supposed to arrive in a carriage or a limousine or a chariot, I'm not really sure what. So I was running and being excited, and I was thought to myself, what a journey it was from I grew up on a council estate in Newcastle to being, sort of gently disdainful of the Dorchester. It wasn't something I expected as a kid, but growing up in Newcastle, I went to Kenton School. So I joined the Labour Party when I was 16. I knew I wanted to be an engineer or a scientist when I was about 9, so my entire life has really been about politics and science and engineering. I went to Imperial, studied electrical engineering. I'll talk a bit more about this. I'd worked for 5 years. I worked for Nortel, Northern Telecom, and then I went to Manchester Business School, actually on day release. That was fantastic to get an MBA, and then worked as a partner in Hammertown and at Ofcom, as Dorothy said. And I was elected in 2010, and I am still a chartered engineer. Always an exception. I did this slide once and somebody said I should call it always exceptional, which sounds a bit like blowing my own trumpet a little bit too much, but these figures show how little has changed. When I entered Imperial in 1984, I was told I was the advance guard of the cohort of women engineers, just as in medicine and in law, we would achieve something near gender parity in engineering in the near future. So fast forward to 2010, when I was elected, and women still made up only 10.5% of engineers at that time. Now, I think the figure is 16.5%. Change, that's progress, but change isn't happening fast enough. And when I entered Parliament, I was determined we shouldn't have to wait another quarter century to make sort of some small progress. I'm sure you're familiar with most of these statistics, but that's for women in STEM. The figures for BME and socioeconomic background, class, are also very poor. And as part of trying to make things change, one of the questions I asked myself was, why did I go into STEM? At the council estate I grew up on, there weren't any scientists or indeed professional engineers there. We was a one-parent family. We did, in my fantastic state school, learn about the great scientists of the past, like this is Archimedes, and also, locally, George Stephenson, the founder of the railways, who did grow up poor like me in the northeast, but I don't really think I saw myself in him. Surprisingly enough, there was, my favorite film as a child was 2001: A Space Odyssey, but I also really liked National Velvet, and I had no intention of being a jump jockey. So I think the point is that what influences us all is different and varied, and there is no one moment which tells young people, or young girls in particular, to go into science or engineering. And so, as I'll say, the solutions to the challenges we have now have to be varied as well. But I just want to say a bit about my work as an engineer. It was a fantastic, it was a fantastic job. I worked for Nortel in London and in Paris. As a hardware engineer, as a project manager, I was cable and wireless. I worked in Singapore in the Far East. As operations director with Telligent, I lived in Washington, D.C., and I worked in Vienna, Virginia. I had a fantastic commute. That's my commute. I used to drive past the George Bush Center for Intelligence every morning, and it always put a smile on my face. And then I also worked in Nigeria on GSM networks. Actually, here's another little test for you. So it's, what is that? Anyone know what that is? That is the backhaul network for MTN, the first GSM network in Nigeria, which I built out, designed actually, helped design and build out. And it was it's one of the things I'm proudest of prior to coming into politics. Deciding to do an engineer was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was well-paid, flexible work around the world. You know, it was the best job, I would say, second only to being the MP for Newcastle Central, the best place in the world. And my family, someone will tell from my name, my heritage on my father's side is Nigerian. My father comes from Awka in Nigeria, and I built the part of the network that went through that, which he was very proud of. So you know, STEM has so much to offer women. It has, it's well-paid jobs, and I shall say there's greater job security than in politics, as many find out. You know, the average shows the average salary for in STEM. Which is a third higher than the average salary generally. I mean, there's still a gender difference in STEM salaries, which we have to address. I'll talk a little bit about that. But one of the reasons for the gender pay gap is because traditionally men's jobs, like engineering, are paid much better than traditionally women's jobs, like care work. And that is one of the reasons why we have to address and break down those boundaries. And I always say that, you know, I entered politics for exactly the same reasons I went into engineering, which was to make the world work better for everyone. And that's one of the great things that engineering and STEM have to offer women, changing the world for the better. If you think about the great challenges we face now, and let me just say, you know, climate change, the existential challenge, you know, so many of the ways in which we reduce our emissions and the ways we mitigate the impact of those emissions are engineering and science questions and solutions. And so what could be a more caring profession than changing the world to make the planet livable for all of us for the future? And so, you know, what science and STEM have to offer women is fantastic careers. And so just briefly talk about the pandemic and health and well-being. You know, those challenges are also, as we saw with the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine, their challenges are also challenges of science and addressing them. Some of these challenges are really, you know, inspire young people and young women in particular if we talk about them and present them in the right way. And we, women, have so much to offer STEM. You know, I always think, you know, this is some of the Bletchley women, the first African-American women astronaut, and some great women in here. You know, I always say that you can't have, STEM cannot represent humanity. Science and engineering can't represent humanity unless scientists and engineers represent humanity. And so one of the things that keeps me awake at night is thinking about all the great technology and engineering we would have, you know, today, the fantastic products and services we could have if STEM had been representative of women throughout the ages. You know, we could have what we wouldn't have, this is the worst, the worst example of a technology rollout ever. Though there's a lot of competition, including an operating system where you have to press Control-Alt-Del to start it. But this, you know, they've improved now, thank God. You know, but initially that was just a way of putting out technology which was aggressive, unwelcome. You know, and like we need to have women in the design teams, in the labs. You know, women and representatives of all sections of society in order to deliver technology that works for humanity. Yes, unidentified item in the bag now. We still get that. Right, so no single solution. You know, I've said that's a multi-dimensional challenge, you know, but I tell you some of the things which don't help, you know, some of the stereotypes. And then, yes, danger, men at work, you know. You know, and that's just, you know, this is not a sort of party political advert, but I will say, this is not the solution. I actually thought this was a joke when it came out, which is the sort of the Conservatives conference big idea on science. It's not a joke. They did this. I did not make this. They did this. You can see the little oak in the sun. You know, the big idea was to kick woke ideology out of science. You know, that is not the answer, and that is not even the problem. So, let me tell you what some of the answers, and I don't have all the answers, and that's why I'm trying to press on to get to the Q&A. But some of the answers, though, will come from, this is the new science and technology team in the Labour front bench. It's Peter Kyles, the Shadow Secretary of State. That's me, the Shadow Science Minister. And then we have technology, AI, digital and creative industries. And these are our representatives in the Lords. And so just, you know, I firmly believe that politics sits at the intersection of all the different ways in which we need to diversify STEM and how we will get there. And I think that, as I said, politics, you know, like science, but in a different way, is the engine of change and progress. And I'm really proud to be part of a team, you know, which recognises that. And you know, many scientists, engineers I've been speaking to, are really inspired by the way in which at our conference, Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, our Shadow Chancellor, everyone, Wes Streeting, our Shadow Health Secretary, everyone talked about the importance of science and engineering. And also, I did 18 events in 2.5 days because there was such an interest in science and engineering and how it can provide that positive narrative about a future which is better than the past. So we have 5 missions, set 5 bold missions for government, which are, you know, and they are all science and technology sort of related. So obviously growth comes from the best growth, good sustainable growth, which is what we want, comes from science and innovation-driven jobs and change. And part of that is from our clean energy superpower mission, which is, the transition to net zero doesn't have to be a burden. It can be a huge opportunity for new markets and developments and engineering, an engineering challenge as well. And that's sort of our green prosperity plan, which looks to address that. Obviously, if building an NHS fit for the future, the life sciences are at the heart of that. And Wes Streeting spoke about the way in which technology, say AI, as well as being an existential threat, as some people say, but AI can help identify cancers more quickly and can give personalized treatment. There's so many sort of positives that can come out of technology. And making Britain's streets safe, that we need to apply some technology to, the Home Office criminal database is 50 years old. Crime is being automated, but the fight against crime is not being automated. Organised crime seems to be keeping up with the technology in some ways better than we are. So technology is at the heart of that too. And obviously breaking down barriers to every stage, which is our sort of educational challenge, and that's from Bridget Phillipson. And I'll just say briefly, she talks about, she talked in a conference speech about how parents want their children to feel the wonder of science. And I knew from a young age that I wanted to be an engineer, but I was told in the playground that girls didn't do maths. And I didn't know any women engineers. I suffered actually from what I now call Marie Curie syndrome, which is the inability to name more than one female scientist or engineer. And so school is such a pivotal time for deciding, what interests you, what career to choose. So we've got an ambition to tackle the chronic challenges and the problems with maths teaching, so make sure it's better taught from the age of 6. And a recent report showed that women and girls feel steered away from technology and science in school, and we need to address that. We're going to create a Skills England to bring leadership and ambition to England's skills system. And let me just finish now. Let me try and finish in sort of 5 or 6 minutes on what else I feel that we need to do, because it's a broad area. So the first thing I'd say is measure and monitor. I'm a firm believer that statistics tell us how the world is working or not working, and that as engineers, as politicians, as scientists and lobbyists, you need to understand that in order to be able to make them better. And we also need to know, we need to know what works, what does improve things. I'm the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on diversity in STEM, and one of the reports we're looking at is what is actually making a difference. There have been many initiatives. I was a recipient of the Caroline Hazlitt Memorial Prize for Women in Engineering in 1984. There have been many initiatives over many years. What we need to do is measure and monitor what works, and particularly actually also, where we have gender pay gaps and what sort of policy making changes that. My team is looking at, this is sort of a spreadsheet of the current diversity programs that the government is offering, which amounts to a total of about £30 million a year. I mean, I'm not saying that's the right amount. I'm not saying it's and I'm certainly, Rachel Reeves is, I'm not making any spending commitments to change that or not, but let's understand where the money is going and what it's being achieved for what we are spending. What we also need to do is organise. This is one festival is part of that, but as well, Girls and ICT Day, we have the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Diversity Inclusion in STEM has released reports on STEM skills inequity, on equity in the STEM workforce, on equity in education, what works and what has changed for the better. Then we need to organise ourselves to be able to understand and address these challenges. We also need to network and mentor, and that's, I think, Labour's looking at ways in which we can support particularly women in their careers, in early careers, and the commitment which we have made to long-term funding for science, 10-year funding cycles for science, will make a real difference here. Because one of the barriers to women and those who often have caring responsibilities staying in science and research is the fact that so often it's short-term cycles. You get a grant or a project, and then you're looking to apply for the next one, and that kind of short-termism has a detrimental effect, particularly on those from unrepresented groups and those from lower socioeconomic groups. And I think this figure I just give you that the Royal Society of Chemistry found that on female chemistry PhD students who are planning a research career after finishing their PhDs, that was 72% in the first year of their PhD, but only 37% in the final year of their PhD. So something is making an academic life less attractive to women, whereas for men it only fell by 2% over that time, 2 percentage points. So we need to provide greater support and mentoring and networking for women who are in STEM. We need to enable. So so we have, like the Athena Swan, award for breaking down barriers to opportunity. You need to do the STEM ambassadors, which sends out as a fantastic charity, which has over 30,000 individuals who offer their time to support women and girls into STEM. We need to ensure that there is support and appropriate long-term funding. And we need to support women throughout their careers. And I'd be interested to hear from you some of the ways that we can do that. I mean, there's a specific specific challenges for women in STEM, but there are general challenges for women in the workforce. And it's a shocking statistic that 2/3 of young women have been sexually harassed at work. We need a zero tolerance culture and, where there are whistleblowers. So that's why the next Labour government will amend the Equalities Act to introduce a legal duty for employers to take all reasonable steps to stop sexual harassment. We need to make alliances. And these are some, because obviously women in STEM is a particular challenge, but there are many challenges of lack of social justice in our country, and by working together with other groups and learning what the best practice with other groups. So the other challenges and other groups who have worked to address some of these challenges as well, then we can learn what works, and we can also, as a stronger together than we are apart. What we also need to do is a popular culture. So I love this. Anyone's ever seen this or read it? Women scientists in 50s science fiction films. Always beautiful, always with the hair down, at some point in the film, always white. but addressing some of the cultural images of women and women scientists, women in engineering, women engineers. I think there's been there's sort of heartening progress over the time I've been in Parliament. There's many more programs about women, I think on radio and television, about women engineers. There's some fantastic work by, women engineers leading visibility in this area, but we need to do more. And then, inform, there are, as I said, the fantastic careers. It can be hard, growing up in Newcastle as a kid, I knew what the engineers built ships and got coal out of the ground and rail, etc. It can be hard these days to make the product of engineering and science as visible. I think obviously the COVID epidemic helped there, but there's so much wide range, of engineering and STEM and science careers that informing people and making sure, from whether it's blogs or women in STEM resources, making sure that's available. And then, and finally, what we need to do is celebrate, and I think it's obviously we're in Black History Month, that's me there, but celebrating, and Black History Month is, the particular theme is saluting our sisters, celebrating, the achievements, the many achievements that women have already been part of, and showing, that old saying, you can't be it if you don't see it. But seeing it in a positive sense, the positives of STEM as a career and as a vocation, celebrating that, and that's what that's also what a Labour government would seek to do more of by talking and supporting about women in STEM and about the great critical importance of STEM to our future prosperity, health, and well-being. So that's this is my parliamentary website. If there are suggestions or ideas, it's an ongoing challenge. I think that the key. There is not one solution, but that also means that there are many different pathways to a solution. I am determined that we do not spend another 25 years with a few percentage points increase in the proportion of women in STEM. We need to make that change. We need to make that change happen. We can all be part of that change. I believe a Labour government will make a significant contribution to that change, but we need to do it all together. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That was terrific. One of the things, of course, I have to say what the Conservatives say that they're doing. And I noticed that they welcomed the recent report of the Science and Technology Committee into diversity and inclusion. And then they gave many, many, many pages in response of all the wonderful things that they're doing. And it was striking how many pages there were. But you've also said there's no one solution. And I noticed that in that report, they highlighted the fact that there had been many worthy inquiries, reports, and initiatives. And I think one of the concerns people have is it ever really going to happen? I mean, do you believe it can happen? Because lots of things are done, and our college does some of them, and it creeps up a few percentage points. Can you commit to it's not going to be 19% doing computer science or 25% engineering? That in 5 years' time, if a Labour government came in, there would be a significant difference. I'm not saying you should say it would be 51%, but it can't just dribble along.
Well, I mean, it has dribbled along for decades and decades, and I think it's great that the Conservatives or the civil servants can sort of put together all the initiatives there are. Sorry, I could talk about this for a long time, but I'm trying to be concise. So, one of the key things is about, as I found as an engineer, that working in a company which paid lip service or not to gender equality, you can tell the instant you walk sort of in whether the leadership actually cared about it or not. And I think the same is true in university science departments as well. Whether it's real change which is being driven or whether it's a tick box exercise, and that is where leadership drives culture and cultural change. And so that's why I talk. That's why I talk about the importance of having Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, Wes Streeting talk technology up, and also talk science and technology up, and also talk up the role of women and the importance of equity in science, engineering, and in politics as well. So I think that the part of the challenge, though, when you have so many different initiatives, is what path you find through those initiatives. I talk to engineering and science companies and pharma companies all the time, and they want to make a contribution, but there isn't anywhere that they feel that they can go to find out what they can do themselves. And so, one of the things that that we want to do is to make it, as I say, talk about enabling, make it really clear how companies can contribute it and what is expected of good and responsible companies. So I'm not going to say that it's going to go up to a certain, because any percentage that I said that isn't 50% would be too low, But I'm not sure that we can. I don't feel like I can make a commitment to 50% now. So not in the first term, but we are. I think you will be able to tell, but this is a key priority and expectation of a Labour government in a way which I don't think we've seen so far. And one of the things that does make me think that it can happen, because I spent 23 years, I used to sit in rooms and as an engineer or in labs and figure out the square root of the number of women in the room, and the cube root, and the root to the power 4, and the root to the power 5. And it wasn't, it's fantastically great mathematician, but the number of women in the room was always 1. So it was really, that's a maths joke, so I don't have very many of them. So, but I've spent a lot of time, thinking about what makes a difference and what does make a difference, as well as having the actual sort of programs and, in place, is having real leadership and having, when a CEO says to me, I want to change the proportion of women in my company, then I know that is leadership, rather than waiting for me to ask them, how many women engineers do you have?
So my only second question, and I'm going to come to the audience, is that the Conservatives have a figure that looks like a very good figure, that the half of A-level entries now are girls in biology, chemistry and physics. And that's up by 44% from 2010 to 2022. Now, but at universities, it's not, those figures are not going up in that way. And To what extent would you, as a government minister, be yourself or urging your colleagues in education to say to universities, you've got to change. This is not acceptable. And when you see these figures in universities still so low in the percentage doing computer science, maths, physics, engineering, what do you think, and what would you say to the UK university sector about its record?
I mean, obviously we hope to have a general election next year, and we are working really hard to be in government. But I'm certainly not waiting to be in government to say to universities that this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. I've been saying that all the time. I've been the shadow science minister that that we need to have better, and we have had some improvements, as you say, but we need to have better diversity and better representation, and that involves different programs and different forms of access. But I think one of the things that we are looking at is how you measure success, and success in academic terms, and success in the research excellence framework, and success in educational terms. And part of that success is certainly ensuring that excellent science is also excellent science by representation, by a more diverse science base.
So might you be prepared to consider amending the ways in which universities are judged, for example, in REF, to include greater diversity being something you would require?
Yeah, I'm not making a policy announcement here but we made it very clear Peter Kyle made it very clear in our conference speech, that in his conference speech, that we were looking at REF and the way in which public funding of universities, of university research, partially to reduce the bureaucracy that as I talked about, the repeated applications, and partially to put it on a more trust-based, long-term trust-based sort of footing, but also to look at what how we support regional economic growth, and how we ensure that we have innovation for everyone, and that innovation is representative of everyone.
Thank you. Now I would like to open it up to, I think you had your hand up here first, and we'll just bring the microphone to you. And do introduce yourself if you feel like it.
Hi, I'm Amy Jarrett. I'm a sixth form student. So you talked a lot about having immediate change and not waiting another 25 years for change. But a lot of the things you talked about doing are more long-term, sort of changing overall attitudes within society, and thereby, over time, changing attitudes towards STEM within women. What would you do immediately? What would you do to counteract the way women are discouraged, even if subconsciously, by teachers, and the way instances of sexual harassment and the like they are told that they're unacceptable, but then aren't heavily punished? There isn't anything enforced around them. How would you change that on a wider scale within all schools? Because you can make policy and say we want to change this and tell schools to do differently. How do you enforce that they actually change?
Okay, that's a great question. It's a big question. It's a big question. I mean, one of the things I said that we do immediately, is to amend the Equalities Act so that to make it a duty to prevent sexual harassment. So that means that that takes away, if you like, the excuse that we didn't know it was happening, or didn't want to be able to, weren't able to enforce it, because there was a duty to like search it out and stop it. So that's one of the changes that we would make on immediately. I think there is there's somewhere between I have on the first day of a Labour government, obviously, the sun is not going to shine any stronger. Well, it may actually, you know, but you know, there's not. We have to be clear that it's not going to be. When you say immediate, it's not going to be in the first few days, if you like, but you know, there's somewhere between immediate and a quarter century where we will be making, and then we will be making, and we will be judged on the changes we make in our first term. So we have the, you know, how we're going to address equalities. We will be setting out how we're looking at university funding, and we will be setting out how we're looking at the sort of how we're driving, you know, university or academic culture as well, and you will see some immediate changes there, but you'll also see long-term changes. Because the other thing, if you have change needs to embed, you know, and it's women and girls of all ages who are prevented from being in STEM. So we need to address it at all points of the sort of career and pipeline as well.
Thank you. We have a question down here.
Hi, I'm Jess Wade from Imperial. I just want to say thank you so much for that talk. It was absolutely fantastic and a great question earlier. My question was coming to your point, and I really enjoyed the kind of intersection of science and policy making, and thought it's very powerful. But looking at science with this 10-year funding perspective and vision, and saying that will give more long-term stability, there's been all of these strategies released recently, the quantum strategy, the semiconductor strategy, that are these big 10-year, multi-billion-pound initiatives. And if you think about the quantum strategy, that's 2.5 billion over the next 10 years. And in the whole strategy, it didn't mention diversity or gender equality or thinking about trying to improve diversity once, which is kind of out of step with all of those similar diversity reports happening separately to these technical science strategies. And I wonder how you or Labour would reconcile that.
That's a really, well, thank you for the thank you, but that is another really good question, because it goes to some things about, well, you know, the machinery of government and being joined up. I would say it also goes to things about, you know, Labour values, where, you know, equity and equality are at the heart of them. And I don't think we could write a quantum strategy which did not, you know, address, actually it's a skills issue as well, you know, address the lack of diversity in that sector. So we have had lots of strategies. Strategies is not the same as like a 10-year sort of funding plan, and a lot of those strategies and the funding is not funded, if you know what I mean. Like, there's no way, there's nothing that says, I'm just asking, nothing that says where the money is actually coming from. But yeah, we look more joined up government, and which reflects sort of Labour values, and Labour values equity is at the heart of that. And you know, I've spent a lot of time in rooms thinking about science and engineering and the lack of women, and it's hard for me to put that aside.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Chi.
No.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm really glad that you mentioned STEM ambassadors. So as I've worked as a STEM ambassador and done a lot of school outreach work, and I guess my question is, whilst doing all of this work, and again today we mention a lot in regards to school children and education, the return on investment, if you will, when we're working with 12-year-olds is about 10 years to see whether or not they'll choose it at university, let alone choose it as a career. Are we doing enough to allow women to career pivot into STEM career?
No. No, and there's a wide answer. That's another great question. There's a sort of lot of answers to that, and I've only got 1 minute and 8 seconds left. But you know, there's a cultural thing. This image that STEM and science are so difficult that if you don't sort of choose it when you're 6, you know, you can't get into it later on. And I think we need to address that, possibly because there's so many different careers you can have in STEM, which are STEM-related and STEM-driven. And one of the things that we're doing is, I talked about the Council for Skills, but it's also, you know, about having sort of lifelong learning opportunities and increasing the connections between further education colleges and higher education, so you can have broader access to those sorts of skills. But I remember I visited Google in the US, in Silicon Valley, and all their